Welcome, everybody. We're back for another episode of Peach Pit. This is our first episode of the 2024 season of Kickoff reaction video. We got a few awesome content areas to jump into for some initial reactions, some deep dive in where I don't know, deep dive's the right word for it, considering we've sat on it for one day, but we'll give ourselves some leeway on that one. We'll look at a little bit of the kitbot, some season predictions, and some other chit chat here and there, but try not to make this too long as we sometimes do. With that said, before we get started, we have to make the usual disclaimer. Any views or opinions shared on the show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team, First, Georgia First, South Carolina First, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So the idea behind the show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. With that said, my name is Kellen Hill, one of our hosts here. I'm currently retired from mentoring, and I'm excited to say I've recently joined the Georgia First Planning Committee as the practice field coordinator for this season for all events. So excited to fill in that role. You'll also see me FTAing at a couple of events through the season. Currently planned for Dalton, Gwinnett, and hopefully district champs. But we're looking forward to seeing everybody out there.
Hi, my name is Anupam, and I am the head coach of Team 9477, rookie team, Lambert Robotics, and we might change that name. I don't know yet.
I am Brian Carlson. I am with Team 6829 in Night Robotics, and I'm a strategy mentor there.
Hi, I'm David Allred. I'm from Team 4451 Robots Garage out of Lawrence and Fountain Inn High Schools. And I am on the South Carolina Planning Committee, have been for a couple of years, but my views here are nothing to do with the Planning Committee. So.
I think.
Not him again.
I have arrived.
Yep, Thomas is always in the dark. Go figure.
Straight from the bakery.
I'm Thomas Priego. I'm a consultant for Team 4451 Robots Garage.
You betcha. Picked him up on waivers. Baby.
Yeah, we've got a stiff transition this year. We used to have 3 1746 mentors, and now we're down to 0. For those interested in the story, we've got a good transition for some new leadership to 1746. Nothing dramatic happened over there. They've got a good group of alumni from Otto kind of leading the show. A new teacher over there helping things get going. So looking forward to what Otto pulls off this season, but a few of us are in different places this season. So
yeah,
looking forward to seeing what they do.
People's life took them in different directions and didn't make it feasible.
Life happens.
Yep. Yeah. But with that said, and having everybody introduced, we're going to jump into some conversation here. What do we think about the game? Crescendo is the name. We got a lot of musical themed kind of game elements. So we're still trying to get the firm grasp on for
the bass guitar in the background.
There you go.
At a ranking points, I'm just curious. I'm not sure what the terms are yet.
Right? Oh yeah, I should bring that. I'm drive coach. I should bring that.
Oh yeah.
You know, you get the old Xbox Guitar Hero 1. You can drive a robot that way.
Yeah, somebody is going to do that this season. Please bring in the Guitar Hero controller.
If there's any year to bring in the DDR pad, it's this year.
So really quick, Ignite. We're not doing that. We're not doing that.
No, we're gonna add it, tires.
All right, seriously though, what are the reactions to this game? I think it's a good one from a number of elements. But Anupam, what you got?
Well, so my first thought, those of you who are old enough to have experienced 2013, I think that's most of us here. Thomas, I don't know if you remember that, but 2013 was kind of an odd game in that it was a very unique or unique object to pick up and shoot. And this is very similar. Like in 2013, you had the frisbees to shoot into the goals, And this year you have a musical note, which is essentially just a ring that you're shooting into a goal that's high up. You also have to climb onto a chain this year. That year you had to climb onto a pyramid. The pyramids and the stage are in about the same position, meaning visibility is about the same. You're doing cross field shooting. Even the like human player into the robot interaction is very similar to that.
You're also like dunking the frisbees at the top once you've climbed, which is another kind of in the ballpark game mechanism. The other interesting twist on that, I think, there's so many cycling games you can compare this to. Like 2016 a little bit, just because you're only cycling with one game piece back and forth, that the value of trying to score, making sure the game piece you're cycling with goes in the goal, instead of 2 out of 3. Okay, that's good enough. But if you're cycling and shooting one game piece, you got to make every cycle count. But the other twist is then I think more comparable to 2018 with the GameCube or the Power Cube power ups that you'd be able to push. But to add any bonus on any other scoring element of the game, that I think that has a really interesting strategical twist on this game compared to a lot of other games we've seen recently.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed in this thing is you look at 2022 and the ranking RP for the shooting was 20 game pieces, which is this one's at 18. And 20 wasn't they weren't getting 20 early in the season. Now we're talking 18, but doing one per cycle. It's really going to be hard for one team to really get you 75% of that. You really need to have 2 or 3 robots contributing.
On top of that, in 2022, the cycles, you weren't having to traverse the entire field just to collect game pieces. You were able to, there was this chance that the game piece would land right next to where you shot it. So that also led to you being able to score a lot more on your own than you probably will in this game.
Yeah, I think because of the difficulty and the ranking points, and I think the climb is even harder, right? The end game. Last year we had, if you didn't get 4, you were like, boy, we're falling back. This year wins are going to be a lot more valuable. Mm-hmm. Those 2s.
Yeah, I'd like to cover a couple of the obvious things there, though. First during the COVID years said, hey, you teams make a game. And they said, we might use it in the future years. And they followed through. They did it. Mm-hmm. So I was familiar with 1678 Storm Surge game. I may have seen the 3061 Husky Robots game, but doesn't ring a bell. I think what would ring a bell to me was the chain, but in their game, the chain, when you pull down on one chain, they were all looped together. It was one chain, so the other side.
Yeah, that was a fun dynamic for the climbing in that one.
And so, at least, thank you first. You didn't do that one on us. And so that was, I think, that chain dynamic came from the Huskies. So, but fortunately, I have drawn a robot to play the Storm Surge game, so I had a slight head start. But this game piece is way different, or at least my assumptions is way different. I figured the Citrus Circus game piece was a lot stiffer than this guy. This guy's like it is a pool noodle in a circle.
Yeah. I will say I really like this game. I think this game sort of goes way last year where you really had the role for 3 offensive bots, right? Shooting and amping and stuff like that. So I there's a lot of variety in the game, the way you play it, and there's a lot of potential for it to go offensive and not be a defensive, struggle like 2014.
With that said, I think there's a lot of room for defense in this game. I think it's still dangerous, like 2022 or 2020 even. But 2023, you saw very little effective defense because the scoring zone was just the biggest safe space, and there was little room. There was not much effective room between there and the loading zone, which was also a huge safe zone, to really get in somebody's way, and everybody was swerve driving super quick. But this year, obviously, you're having to play defense double blind kind of through 2 significant field elements on the field. So if you're playing defense, there's a good chance you're racking up some penalties. But if you know somebody's only fender shooting on the speaker right from the base of it, and that's their sweet spot, and you can sit there and not give them their shot, there's a lot of room
if I
for
just
defense
sit there in front of the speaker with a 4-foot tall piece of cardboard, you can't see the airport tag to aim at it.
Yeah. Ah, that's an interesting strategy.
Well, I mean,
There's
it's gonna be. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So you're gonna have to shoot to a point in space.
Well, it's also there's also a fun kind of balanced mechanism of this goal is awesome in a number of ways. It's a fun design challenge.
It's not all
because
evil.
the overhang makes it so it's harder to shoot on from further away, but it also encourages having a shorter robot because it increases the angle of opening instead of shooting from up here and having a narrower one. But the shorter you are, the easier you are to block.
Yeah, so I think one defender, two offense is big in this game, but you can play triple, I think.
Well, I think back to like 2013. What won 2013 was the triple offense strategy. Just throughput was the name of the game, and now with only one game piece in the cycle, though, that might change. But I think I think the difference is going to be when you're amplified, you need to have all three robots shooting into the speaker because that's just too much of a point difference if you only have two robots playing offense. Each amplified note is worth 2.5 times one unamplified note. So that can add up really quickly.
Right. So if I give up one amplify by playing defense, then I have to cause the other alliance to lose 3 cycles. Otherwise, it's not worth it, right?
I personally think defense, like last year, will die as soon as events are deep enough to handle triple offense.
Yeah.
I've been looking a lot about really, really studying how teams can maximize and the effectiveness of their amplifications. And I've found that the best way to do that is to run triple offense. That way you're not wasting any cycles of your best shooter. I think defense will be used and can be used quite effectively, but as soon as the event is deep enough to where triple offense can be done, it will be done, and anybody who continues trying to do the 2+1 will lose. Similar to what happened at District Champs, where you saw the teams that went triple offense all of a sudden were just swinging it.
Well, and within that triple offense, I think that's where this game strategically is so fun because you can have like a dedicated amp bot that's just continually feeding that thing, and you'll get occasional boosts when they get the 2 in, and like, all right, it's time to amp, and the other 2 robots are just loading the speaker as best they can. Or do you have an alliance that has at least a couple robots with amp capabilities that are taking turns feeding it, where then all 3 robots say, all right, time now that we're amped, let's all go three shoot. I think there's also strategies around like piling up notes by the speaker that when it is amped is that you grab as many as you can and score them. That, like you're saying, Thomas, I think early events, you're going to get some easier wins just by like going crazy on the speaker. But once teams and alliances really sort out the strategy on using that amplifier, scores are going to blow up, and it's going to be hard to keep up if you're not keeping up with that strategy.
Well, so the other thing,
this game will evolve very fast.
The other thing that's really interesting with this game, and we're going to talk about it later, but that's why I mentioned it now. The kitbot can't do the amplifier; it can do the shooter. So we have a shooter game where rookie teams are contributing to shooting, and that sort of changes a lot of dynamic, right? Because if it was normally the lower resource or newer teams would struggle on shooting and they'd try to find their niche elsewhere. Now in their shooter game, they're actually presented with the ability to contribute in that role.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the design challenge required for the amplifier, right, you need to either place it in gently or find the optimal angle to shoot your little note in, and you have to line up sideways with well, it's on your side of the field, but you still have to line up sideways on the side of the field, which is more difficult than lining up straight to the goal. So
What I think an interesting initial reaction to it is seeing the kitbot scoring high goals. What would you'd normally like think of? Oh, why are they scoring high goals? They made the kitbot to do the usually what's viewed as the difficult thing, but that the AMP is such a different scoring mechanism and really there's no like well-defined high goal logo this year. It's really the combination of the two that you got to sort out. But it's really interesting that between the speaker, the amp, the trap, climbing, either if you're doing a floor intake or wall intake, there's a lot of specialized mechanisms or movements you got to cover. So if you can find any of those weird gaps where you can do the same thing or two different of those mechanisms with the same mechanism on your robot, you're making money. But it's a game of niches.
Yeah, it is. Of course, somebody's going to name their robot Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your niche? I don't know.
I actually wish I could have made up or found a shirt that said Admiral Akbar. It's a trap for this episode.
Somebody's got to make a shirt that says it's a trap, but then put the trap on there from this year's game.
Yeah, his head just sticking out of it.
Yeah. I would buy that.
That's a new decoration. You got Akbar coming up behind the screen every once in a while.
All right. Well, we got to call Disney.
As long as you don't sell it.
Well, so let's talk about. We've talked about
educational purposes.
We've talked about teleop. Why don't we switch over? Speaking of trap, we can talk about endgame, and then we can. I think there's a few autonomous strategies too to talk about there.
Okay.
So, endgame, right? We have climbing the chain. You have harmony, which is getting 2-on-1s. You have the spotlight, which allows a human player to try and get an extra point for every robot that's spotlit. And then you have the trap. So, is the trap a trap?
I'd say yes and no. For the teams that can do it, it's absolutely necessary to make getting that ranking point easier. The teams that probably can't do it shouldn't attempt it because it is such a hard task. To allocate the resources necessary will probably lead to you being worse elsewhere.
Right. It's one of those things where it is complex. As long as you understand the complexity, right? And you might want to wait till you see somebody solve one that's a little more something you can copy.
Well, it's such a hard thing to add on, I think, because the climbing on a chain is such a dynamic thing for swinging, for how centered you are on it one way to the other, that if you wind up angled in a direction, but also pivoting forward and backward, depending on where you're hanging or where your robot's center of gravity is. Yep. But yeah, trying to, and you have to climb up in order to push it in, that it's really hard to plan around out of the gates, but I think adding it on later in the season is even more interesting.
Yeah. We'll see what we do. From a strategy standpoint.
Looking at, I don't know if we have any slotted time for ranking. Yeah, we got that. I guess, strategic deep dive for the ranking points. But yeah, the that ensemble ranking point, that it just looks incredibly difficult. I mean, there's the easiest way to get it. I guess it only involves 2 robots, but that you have to have the harmony. Well, what? So harmony with 2 robots.
Yeah, and then a spotlight on them, right?
Yes, and you have to either have your.
You don't need a harmony. The easiest way is, or the easiest way that I've looked at it is, you have one robot on one chain, one robot on the other chain, and then a trap. Like that gets you 11.
Well, the trap is very hard to do. Let's just say that. So like, if you look at
so those are the 2 ways, right? Yeah. What Thomas just said, or 2 robots hanging from the same chain with a spotlight. So those are the two lowest demand ones, in that you only need 2 robots and 1 other action.
Well, if you,
I
if
think
you,
it's harder for a human player to throw a noodle onto that thingy than it is for a robot to put something in the trap.
That the microphones are not very tall. I think the top of these climbing platform, or the truss platforms,
7.5 feet.
isn't
Right. So
yeah. So I mean, you get 3 shots at it too, which is
Right.
the other interesting part. But yeah, training
But what if
the value of that human player is huge, because number one, they
Yes.
have that on their plate, but they also have the amp during the match, and knowing when to be amplifying and competitioning. That
Right.
the human players need to be very well trained this year.
So, people taking notes, scout human players this year.
Yeah. Make sure you
don't get me
recruit
started on
a
scouting.
frisbee golf. Make sure you recruit
Yeah.
an ultimate or frisbee golf player.
I'm just saying, I look like a high schooler and I'm great at ultimate frisbee.
There you go. But yeah, if you get the trap, you also have on stage. So that's 8 points. All you need is 2 of the robots just to park. Right, that gives you 10.
No, you have to have 2 robots in the air.
Parked
Yeah.
robots,
Park
right.
park
right.
robots don't count
That's right.
towards the.
which is
Well,
ridiculous,
well-
because you can have 3 robots climb without spotlights, and you don't get the RP
Yeah.
because that's only 9 points.
Yeah,
It's
I
kind
mean,
of ridiculous to me. Like, getting 3 robots climbed on there should be enough to get that ranking point. It's kind of
They're-
ridiculous, honestly.
They're doing the Admiral Akbar enticing you to do the trap.
Just
Yeah.
just
They're-
climb
they're
on
like
the same
saying,
chain.
Come
Just
with me,
climb on
do
the same
trap.
chain. If you have 2 robots that can climb on the same chain.
Well, that's probably
So
going to
it-
be
it-
Yeah, but you still
difficult
you still
to.
need to get it the other way. You need 3 robots in the air, 2 on one chain, and a spotlight. You still
I
need 3 robots in the air with 2 on one chain and a spotlight.
You don't.
Well,
I don't
no,
think
you
you
can
need
do
a
2 on
spotlight.
one chain
No,
and
no,
1
no,
on
2
the
on
other
one chain
chain,
and 1 on the
and
other.
you're good.
That's right.
And you're
That's
good,
right.
yeah.
That's right.
But
That's
if you
right.
only have 2
Right.
robots capable of climbing, your only shot is to do 2 on the same chain and then 1 spotlight. So if you're
Yeah, it's at least like, I mean, there's only a 4-foot height limit, but if you're driving around at that height, you can be a little top heavy. But to make climbing a little bit easier than it has been, just for the accessibility of it. But yeah, trying to routinely climb with 2 robots on a single chain, or the dependability of having 3 robots climb in a match, I think that's going to increase as the season goes on and people get the robots more in shape. But I think these ranking points really set this game up to do that kind of graduation through the season of, yeah, you're going to be successful early on with the basics, but you really got to start working with what you got, and working on either the amp or climbing strategies to make sure you're ranking high later in the season.
I will say this: with this game, I appreciate the two committees coming together and doing 4 weeks of competitions, 5, because we have more teams, and so it sort of allows a greater likelihood of having more of the top half sort of clumped together, where you can try to do stuff a little bit more than you would in the past, because in a short field, this game can be, one team can sort of take advantage of it and just sort of outshoot stuff.
My hope would be that with the kitbot being capable of shooting, that you don't, even at a 24 team event, you don't have any bare bones chassis at all. Like,
I totally agree. But there's just so many roles in this thing. It's nice to have a deeper field where you can start to see some of that specialization.
yeah.
But yeah, that like leading into scouting is and not that that's the next thing up on our notes here,
Well,
but the amount of different things you have to. What?
We're not going to talk about autonomous gameplay.
Oh yeah, we need to
I
talk
was
about
just getting
autonomous.
excited about.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just
Oh,
getting
yeah.
excited about scouting.
So you have in autonomous, right? You can start with a preload. There's 3 notes in your starting area, right? And then there's 3 a little bit beyond. Let me pull up the thing, and then there's a centerpiece, right? Or is it just
Yeah,
There's
there's 5.
There's
five
5
in
in the center.
there are
There's
3
3 on your side.
Yeah, 3 on your side, and then there's the 5 in the center. Okay,
Yep.
and then you can start with the preload. And then there's 1. Yeah, never mind. So Question number one, do you see anyone going for those centerpieces in autonomous, or just for
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Late game when it's sort of like nobody was doing bump side auton the first 3 weeks, but as soon as somebody else could do it, the teams that were doing it before were now bringing on bump side autons, right? So district champs, I could definitely see the 2 bot taking the 3 and the 1 bot having stuff for the center.
Now, add on to that question. Do you see 2 robots trying to go for the same ring in autonomous, or potentially counter?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're smart
Absolutely.
at scouting, you won't have that issue.
Well,
So
that'll be
this
part of
is if you
possible.
weren't to get around again in 2013, this is a game mechanic that's similar to that year, in that there were frisbees that started on the center line that both alliances would go for. But like they're referencing, you really need if you're playing that game for going for those pieces or playing defense on those pieces, even if you're not planning on shooting them. But you want people with stopwatches figuring out, all right, what game pieces are they going for and how fast are they getting there, to make your decisions about, all right, am I going for a different game piece then, or do I want to go to the game that for that same game piece so I can maybe knock off their auton, but with people using April tags as well as they are. There might be some self-correction to be made there.
This could be I know what you know that I know that you know, right? So they start at one end and go to the center. We know that, so we're gonna go to number 2 and get in front of them and take 2, 3, 4, right?
But
this throws me back to 2006 for like a chess match where 3 robots started on each side of the field in the middle. That you'd have a defensive robot kind of running over at your offensive shooter bots. But yeah, it was very much a like, all right, do we put a pause in our auton so they drive past us and then we drive out? But it's very much a chess match of, all right, what are they up to? What are we trying to do? And
let's put it this way: it's a good year to introduce the A stop button.
Yes.
Oh no, you can abort. But it's also going to impact your robot design, right? So if you go back to 2013, I was there at the I guess St. Louis champs and Los Gorillas 469. Oh my God. I still can't to this day figure out how they got that frisbee to bend around that corner, but they picked up
that floor pickup was insane.
under the robot, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have anything out to get damaged, so they would straddle the center line and just go right down and pick up the game pieces. And if they got bumped, they had correction.
So this is going to be this is going to be more late game autonomous. Let's talk about early game autonomous. So first district event, second district event, maybe. What would you think are the most important? What would be the first like 2 or 3 autonomous modes that you would work on to get implemented first? David,
I think,
or Thomas, start with you.
I think probably it's not the most valuable in terms of points, but one of the most valuable ones in terms of total points, not necessarily teleop points, would be being able to score in the amp and auton, so you can start amplifying as soon as possible to maximize your total points.
I 100% agree with that.
I'm a big fan of one shot into the speaker and then trying to score 1 or 2 in the amp as a follow-up to that. Obviously, 3 game pieces in auton is stretch for a lot of teams, but to take advantage of that auton bonus, because essentially that is an amplified speaker note by scoring it in auton, but to then start prepping the amp for being, again, amplified as soon as possible in teleop, that's where I think you'll... Well, I guess there would also be benefits to scoring, again, 2 or 3 game pieces in the speaker right out of the gates, because, again, they're already amplified.
Yeah, you get the point bonus there. But
I haven't checked the dimensions, but I believe you might be able to sneak 2 right there on the fender. The goal might be wide enough to put 2 side by side. 2 of those kitbots side by side.
Yeah.
And fire them in. It looks a little tight. Depends on how wide those robots are, but I don't want to draw that up. But that's a possibility.
That and maybe timing your shots just so they're not deflecting off of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just a time delay. Boom, boom.
So that's another thing for auton. When you write your autons, everybody should have on their dashboard how many seconds can they delay it, so that way you could coordinate with your alliance mates to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game piece will deflect the other game pieces.
So I think early district playoffs or even district qualifier match, my ideal autonomous for an alliance would be one on the speaker shooting, or two on the speaker shooting if possible, and then one in the amplifier, and all of them move out. That one in the amp, yeah, that's not a speaker shot, but that saves the time that you would need before you get another amplified period.
And if you can only do one game piece, so after you do that game piece being in the speaker or the amp, it's recommended to drive towards the center, right? So across the line, but actually position yourself, especially if you have a kitbot, do your one and then get out next to the center to start up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's tricky for that kitbot.
Yeah, the
Unless you've
kitbot,
got pathing.
it can't get under the chain, can it?
Nope.
No,
Okay.
so you would need to implement some trajectory, or, I mean, at the very least, like cross the center line,
Yep.
if possible, just to get those points.
Yeah, the idea being, that in a game of cycles, you want to shorten the cycles as much
Yep.
as you can. So
if you can't get all
as ready as you can to get partway into your next cycle, you're
So
making moves.
can we talk about traffic lanes and lanes, because this brought up a kind of an interesting point to me. So there's a lot of takes about swerve being what you need to compete at the highest level, and that's probably true. But I'm gonna put out a hot take here. With the travel lanes in this game, I feel like a tank drive can do extremely well in this game, and because last year we had the straight lanes, cross-field cycling, but with the precision required to place those game pieces, the swerve drives were able to control that all the way. But now that we're shooting, lining up for a swerve drive versus a tank drive, there isn't as much of a difference there.
Yeah, so the tank will be good at, or pretty dang good at shooting, a little bit trickier at the amp, right?
Yeah, that's my thought.
But
I
pretty good at shooting.
disagree. I think tank is dead. It's big dead. I just from the sense of being, if you look at it, if you're tank as a swerve robot, if you were playing defense, swerve against tank always wins. And in terms of
Well,
trying
I don't think
to,
that's the argument, Thomas.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
it's more that tank drive is more viable this year than
Yeah.
it was
last.
last
Yeah,
year.
just with the travel
A lot
lanes.
more than last.
Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah.
If you look at the game, right, and you look at, let's say, the top 25% of teams, or in any district, they're going to have to be swerved because they throw a lot of output out, right? And everybody wants to try to stop them. The 75%, this game you can play either way, right? Both of them you can play, because all you gotta do is take a tank drive and do a Walton stop against the subwoofer, and you're lined up.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot.
And
Just
with the like straight lines from the human player station to one side of the speaker, and even if you can go under the stage, like, I don't think you necessarily need to be able to maneuver around others.
Yeah, there's going to be some twists and turns on that drive across.
Hang on, there's one trick for this tank drive guy.
Mm-hmm.
That is the diagonal driver station looking through the stage to the human player station on the opposite corner.
Oh yeah,
that's going to be tricky.
Mm-hmm.
For the
the visibility in this game is tricky.
Well, it's probably better than the picture showed. They had a picture of that driver station view, and I was like, is there a human player station back there? But it'll be a lot better in the game. But it's still tricky to line up to that thing, I think.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the kit bot is tall, so you can see it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Short bot at that wall. Ooh, you better have April tag tracking.
What's next on our agenda?
what alliance roles exist? I think we've talked about this a little bit, just for the different niches that strategically you can have. But I think it's a huge design decision to be jumping into, to decide, like, all right, are we starting with speaker? Are we focusing more on amp, or will we or won't we have a climber? Are we going to go for the trap?
I think the first decision you need to make is, are you doing floor pickup? Yes or no? Get that out of the way.
I would agree with that.
Not that you can't have both, but you better decide that. That decides a lot of your architecture.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, but do you need to? I don't think you need to, except unless you just want to be the autonomous guy that can score multiple game pieces, right? Other than that, you don't need to have a floor pickup, unless, for the skill of your team. If that's your skill, don't try the floor pickup, please.
I think you should do one or the other. Be a dedicated human player, feet fed, or be a dedicated floor pickup that mops up and then gets from the human player station when all the pieces on the floor run out. There's no reason to have the capability of doing both.
Yeah, if I'm a floor pickup bot, I'm having my human player drop it on the floor and just vacuuming it up like that. Unless I'm a weird robot that has a separate slot higher up that the human player can drop a game piece in, I can drive up to the amp and just push it straight out. And it's just easier to have the game piece already at height instead of trying to pick it up off the floor and get it to height. That you can do a separate easy mechanism for that might just be a pneumatic cylinder for a shove out and be on my way.
Yeah, I agree. It's the most precious resource you have all season is time. And you don't have time to spend 2 blocks of effort on an intake. If your shooter happens to work for an intake and you get that for free and you have an intake for ground, that's fine. But I would not duplicate effort for one task.
If you are building a floor intake, make it bulletproof. Teams are going to be fighting over these notes on the floor, and if you don't have that durability, that you're going to be very busy in the pits between matches, but not as consistent in your matches because you'd have a dangling mechanism out there that's not effective.
Sorry, Thomas, I need to interrupt you because I wanted to piggyback on that. I'll let you speak after this, but I looked at the game and the travel lanes in this, and it kind of reminds me of last year. And what I kind of raised an alarm about last year was the fact that with these new brushless motors, there are going to be some hard collisions in the center of this field because you're again going diagonally across the field, and the travel lanes crisscross at the center. So,
yes, they do.
Sorry?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do. So there are going to be some hard collisions, and this is my reminder for teams to build very, very robustly. Like, you may want to put some additional
Yeah. So what do you think
framing.
about that bumper rule that they have this year? No cutouts.
I think it's so
Okay.
they
No
don't
corner
get
bumpers. I
bumpers
think
ripped
it's a
off.
wise move.
Yeah, otherwise you have hit somebody in the wrong spot, rip the bumpers off with those Krakens.
Yeah. I hadn't made any note of this. This is one of the bigger departures or biggest differences on a season-to-season basis. Please, please, please do not show up to an event with a gap in your bumpers. I think the rules allow a maximum half-inch gap in your bumper. Make sure you come with a bumper that's legal and ready to go. But yeah, I think that bumper rule is really interesting, that you either have to go over and pick up off the floor, or there's enough space to be able to drive over and do the pickup from underneath. But
yeah.
Focus on those bumper rules and make sure you're following them.
Thomas wanted to. So,
go on, Thomas. Go on.
He's been
Can
waiting.
I speak now?
No.
All right.
Go on.
I think this year, to go back to the intakes, I think it's a lot like last year in the sense of having a floor intake is really, really good and really, really necessary in Auton. But once you get out of Auton, it's not necessarily that thing that you absolutely have to have. If you look at what happened last year, a lot of the teams that had their floor intake ended up abandoning that's a hard
Yes,
word.
that word. Yes.
Abandoning it through halfway, part of the way through the season, just due to the sheer simplicity of picking up from the human player. So I could, yes, Kellen.
Thomas, do you
What's
remember
this
2017?
wagging
Because
here?
there was so much value in 2017 because while the gears would be on the floor, some teams would solely pick up gears off the floor from their human player station. But if a gear was on the floor at the other team's human player station, which is the exact same alignment as this year's game, you can zoom in there, grab a game piece, and get out within a second. And that cuts. You don't have to drive all the way across the field and back. Whereas
But-
compared to last year, for your
But hold on,
comparison, that safe
said you
zone
don't-
is huge.
but you don't
So,
have to do
like,
that.
You don't have.
Oh,
There's a
I
benefit.
completely
Yeah.
agree, but there's a ton of value in having a floor intake to cut that cycle down by 10 seconds by not having to drive all the way across the field and back. So I'm saying that those floor game pieces are a lot more available and valuable than they were compared to last
And
year.
I think, go Thomas.
I agree, but I personally don't like strategizing around other teams messing up. So I don't see like that situation that you're saying is reliant on a team messing up to have a piece there, where in a situation where you can grab it without getting, that foul point. I think at the highest level of play, teams are going to be really, really smart about I drop it half a second before my robot's going to get there. The robot grabs it right as it's hitting the ground, and you have no opportunity to pick it up. If teams are dropping it there and you have the ability to grab it, no, like that's great. But to plan around that being your plan, your strategy, I think is foolish.
Well, I think Kellen's point is more that rather than taking the time to line up, that costs a precious few seconds, you can just grab the piece and go. And I think that also clears up some traffic that's going to be there in the human player station. If you remember 2013, right, or even 2017, the most annoying thing was you're trying to grab a gear and go, but then like a partner is having trouble lining up, and they're blocking like your human player feeder, and there's traffic in that area. So I think having that floor pickup will help. Not only in a little bit short, you'll save like a second or two in cycle time, but you'll also be able to keep that area less congested.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm
the
again,
question
I'm
And
just
is,
worried
it's a
about
lot
that.
more similar to last year, how teams were just mashing into that double stub station and getting out of there, that you're just running into the game piece on the floor and backing out right away for the
But you could see
instead
that
of trying
double
to get
station from all
trying to get justified
three
on the wall
driving
right for a
stations.
game piece to
Right.
get slid in.
so
So
now as the
it comes
season
down
goes
to
on,
that
you're going to
one
have,
driver station.
as the season go on, you're going to have less drops, right? But like we mentioned earlier, you're talking about looking through the stage, trying to line up against that wall. And in 2017, there were a lot of drops. Like I thought you were going to drop it, so I start pulling away as they let go of it, and it misses, right? And so I'm not sure they're going to have more drops or less drops in 2017, but people were dropping them.
There's going to be a lot of kitbot drops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my contention would be is if it's something you're already doing for picking up on the opposite side of the field, it's just gravy if you can steal those game pieces off the floor in their loading zone.
Yeah.
Clearly, but if your team doesn't have the skill to feed a shooter from the floor pickup, don't make the decision because we said, "Ooh, there's going to be nice juicy game pieces for you."
Yeah.
This is how you're going to cue your shooter. If you can't collect a game piece and then score the game piece, you're
But-
done.
Right.
You
I
just
think-
built the kit bot.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there exists, especially early game, a role for non-floor pickup robots, and I think that is something that teams should definitely don't get caught up in the we need a floor pickup. All right, you can
Right.
get from the human player station. You can practice lining up to make it as easy as possible.
Well, let's put it this way. If your goal, let's say your goal is to make district champs, you don't need a floor pickup to do that.
No.
If your goal is to play on Einstein, yeah, you don't need one of those things.
Yeah.
So what is your team's goals?
So speaking about travel paths, coaches or your second driver, in 2017 we had the same thing. We had basically had the airships in the center, and you want to go diagonals, but your coach or your manipulator, your co-pilot, whatever you want to call that, the other person that's helping out driving, is when you're going in to get the game piece, you better be telling your driver which is the clearest way back. Do you go back around the ship? Do you go down the side, or do you go crisscross?
Yeah, so good point. So as a coach that year, we strategized with our partners on which lanes we would do. Like, and our driver, and this was, we were driving tank drive, right? Our driver was skilled at, if we were on that outside lane, we could go straight down the wall and behind the far ship to get to the wall. That's a skill you're going to want to practice. Straight down, turn behind their ship without hitting anybody touching that podium. But but that's a skill. That would be a good skill to have.
Yep.
Or just build a robot short and go right under that sucker.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I'm a fan of that.
I'm a fan of that one. But if you're
yeah.
tall, you got to figure out how to drive down that wall and behind that other ship. Or you can go diagonal.
Yeah.
But that diagonal's path is going to be.
There's going to be traffic.
It's going to be.
And this is obviously an alliance thing. Like, all right, who's taking what lane, so we know how to manage that traffic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I think on our agenda is the alliance makeups that we think will succeed. We touched on this a little bit when we talked about dedicated amp bots versus hybrid speaker bots and speaker only bots. But I think that there's room for, in the district play before district championships, there's room for all sorts of alliance configurations. Like you could have a speaker only bot, an amp only bot, and a hybrid bot on the same alliance, and do as equally well as 3 speaker amp hybrid bots.
Yeah.
Right. So my advice is always the same. You are now choosing your strategy. You're not playing 1 on nothing. You're playing 3 on 3. What are the other 2 bots you need? Yeah. And if you're playing with them in qualifications, what are you going to do? So you have to work out, you're going to play with that kit bot. No climber, no floor pickup, just shoot. I'm going to go to the wall and back. Boom, that's all I'm doing. So if you need to play on an alliance with somebody, what are you selecting? And if you're playing with 3 kit bots, how do you play the game? I think you can still play the game in qualification. So just plan it out. Don't come surprised.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
We were having long drafts last year with how so many different strategies.
Oh no!
Oh, they didn't change the draft rules, did they?
They did it. They
did not.
So,
oh my God!
Please,
please come with a plan.
Please come with a plan. Exactly. You may not know the bots, but at least know going in what you want to pick. If you don't know the bots.
I think you want, going into alliance selection, you want to have an idea of what type of alliance you want to build based on who you are. If you're an alliance captain and you're an amp only bot, well, you better be looking at the best speaker bots out there. If you are a hybrid bot, maybe you want a dedicated amp bot, or maybe you want a dedicated speaker bot, but have a plan for what your ideal alliance makeup will look like.
Well, typically, if you can do both, right, you can shoot and do the amp, and you're looking for the next best player in the NFL draft, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they're amp or shooter, or, the next best player is who you're picking.
Yeah.
So,
well, the interesting
finding that complementary action.
The interesting thing is, if you have a bunch of bots that are about the same cycling rate, it actually becomes the amp that you might pick first, even though they're all about the same. Or if you have a large gap between you and the rest of the field, you might not want to shoot. You might want an amp to just double my points, because I'm really strong at scoring. I just want somebody there. So there's a lot of different ways you can build an alliance. Obviously, the alliance you build on week 1 through 3 is going to be different than 4, 5, and 6. But as you evolve, so will your strategy.
Yeah, and with that in mind, PCH doesn't have a week 1 event, so make sure you're keeping your eyes open for how those events are going, what alliance structures are working or are not working, and take notes for your own purposes as well as then scouting purposes of, all right, what do we need to be scouting to make those decisions effectively and in a timely manner to make sure those alliance selection processes are going smoothly and you're making good decisions along the way.
Right, like early in the season, 2 cyclers shooting in the speaker forget the amp, and they're competent climbers. One can do a trap. You don't need the amp probably.
Yeah, and go on.
Anyway, go ahead.
So if you're whatever scouting you do, you might want to have statbotics.io open up because it does some great visualizations that if you don't have visualization, that might help you easily see something that your numbers can't show you.
Right.
Scouting this game is going to be hard.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the hardest games to scout. In terms of, I every year build my own scouting system, regardless if I'm on a team, because it's fun. But this year, the sheer amount of stuff that you have to look at just in Auton, it's remarkable, and it's very, very complex. So teams that aren't, who typically slap their scouting solution together in the back end, right, in the week before their competition, start looking at it now. Start planning what you're gonna look for now. Because once you start digging into the weeds, it'll be surprising how much you think or how much you realize you need to know.
Yeah. Data is not your friend. You want actionable data, right? So you know what you want to play like. Don't scout everything, right? I would actually propose this as a practice drill. Watch any week 1 event, go on statbotics.io after it completes, and then have your team look at, let's say, the rank 4 and 5 bot, the 15 and 16, and the 20 and 20, like 25 and 26 bot. And if you can't pick one of those 2 within 30 seconds, you need to figure out what's important because you need to know that going in.
All right, for those alliance notes, I suppose, having covered those, I guess we having a discussion then on any interesting rules or gameplay strategies we see in this game. My one note had really just been that the bumper rule change, that being such a substantial thing, just to make sure teams are actually building full bumper sets or with that minimal gap. But designing around it's also fun because you're either forced to go over and have something that's at the mercy of running in some other robot or doing the under the bumper strategy, or obviously just picking up from the getting a drop in. But
there is no demon electrical bump.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have an under the bumper, right, and it's a stationary under the bumper, then you got to worry about not running over one you're not intending to go over, right? But unless you can articulate it up and drive over the one that's on the floor that you don't want to get. But still, no electrical bump to worry about for getting that sucker lopped off. Yay.
With that being said, another thing comparable to last year, I think we're going to see the return of a lot of 1/4-inch steel sheets on the bottom of robots for low center of gravity. Just for putting all that weight on the bottom of your robot to make sure you're not losing those high-speed collisions.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, high-speed collisions, and then traction for accelerating out of defense.
But I think, like you're saying, David, if you have that gap under your robot in order to go over the game pieces, that your center of gravity is already a bit higher than it could be. But there's, I think, also the interesting situation for the teams that have that 1/4-inch ground clearance off the ground. How often we'll see teams beached on a note.
Beached on a note.
I don't know about beach, but maybe tearing a note up.
Well, that's the other question. How do you think these are going to handle since they sort of are like the the balls from 2022, they got the skin on the outside.
Mhm.
Do you think they're going to maintain consistency as far as how flexible they become, or they become a little more, flexible as time goes on?
That would be
Prototyping will
my
tell.
guess, is that they get a little bit more squishy and more compliant as the day goes on, especially as you get like cracks in that exterior.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
these seem a little bit more stiff. I think the bigger thing you'll see is any chunks taken out of if that really affects the if the note's actually going to stay in a circle, or at least if you're depending on what your shooter looks like, if it's going to pop
Yeah.
out and be a wiggly, squiggly kind of
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
through the air.
So what we're trying to figure out in our prototyping is, can you shoot the knuckleball? And I think you can at the base. You can obviously shoot a knuckleball, or do you have to spin it to
Mhm.
get stable flight? Right.
Yeah.
We'll
I
prototype
really
with.
like the idea of shooting the game piece vertically, just so it's harder to block. Just because you're only shooting something that skinny instead of that wide, but you'd have to be right under, like right at the base of the speaker in order to do this.
To go like
Mhm.
okay.
Just straight up.
Yeah, yeah. But the other fun idea was to put some top spin on it and shoot it into the wall and have it climb itself up in. I thought that would be a fun dynamic, but
Somebody's
So-
gonna make it. How you said it. Somebody's gonna make it.
So I think we see the return to the normalcy on red cards this year. There's a lot of we have a lot of velocity with the Krakens out there, but there's a lot more open area where when you left your protected zone coming out in 2023, you were literally 5 feet from somebody else. And so even though we still have a lot of congestions, and not needing to have a tall robot that needs to reach 4 feet outside its perimeter. So hopefully this year we go back to normal with all that stuff.
Maybe we need a rule that says anybody with a Kraken motor needs to be good enough and short enough to go under the thing, so you can stay out of the regular lanes.
Yeah.
Kraken has to be this tall.
I'm curious how many times we see robots clothesline themselves on their chains for being a tall robot that winds up running into the tower and whoop.
We should add that to the donut shop.
Yeah, we should. What do they call that? The Tortuga?
The clothesline, the
The clothesline.
decapitation.
Oh man!
Reminds
So
me
if
of
you have a variable shooter and you forgot to put the shooter down.
that happened to a team in Peachtree. I don't remember what team it was, but I think it was
2020.
iHot. It happened in 2020. They ran into the
Wheel
tunnel,
of Fortune.
the Wheel of Fortune,
the
with
Wheel
their
of
shooter up accidentally, and the thing decapitated.
Well, I think something interesting that's happened in both 2013 and 2022 was unintentional climbs early in the match, just with the type of climber. So I think teams would like intentionally push people into their bar, and they'd be up off the ground and couldn't get back down. That if there's anything similar in that vein to being climbed earlier in the match than intended, just for the different climb types on chain, but.
All right. What's our next topic,
But-
guys?
Next up, we
Your
got
favorite-
cooperation.
Your favorite topic.
Yeah.
I thought it was. Okay. Cooperation. All right.
I would
Let's start.
like to
Thomas,
add
go ahead.
the goal of cooperation is good. It is good. However, it relies on everybody believing in it. I think if you look at, and I wished first would learn from past mistakes. If you look in previous games where cooperation was directly involved in a team ranking, it does not end well. Just look at what happened to 254 in 2012, and where teams just utterly refused to do the cooperation bridge with them. It is a bet. I think it's a good goal, but to have it be directly impact and be a tiebreaker in terms of ranking is a mistake.
Yeah, let's back up and make sure our audience understands what we're talking about. Right. So I can't remember the exact, was it a rank point in 2012. It could have been a rank point.
It was part of
Yeah,
the ranking
it was a
score.
pure rank point.
It was a
Yeah.
rank point, I think. And this year, this cooperation game is a first tiebreaker in your system. So it doesn't contribute to a rank point, but it's the first tiebreaker. And I've been doing this game for years and years and years, and I always look for rank point skills. I want to have them. And then the next thing I look at is what is the first tiebreaker. I want to have rank point skills and the first tiebreaker. And now the tiebreaker is somebody else's skill, the other alliance, and their plus their willingness to cooperate or cooperate with you. But it's also a skill thing on their side. But so now it comes to the thing where does somebody, as Thomas is pointing out, deny somebody because they're trying to make sure they don't get that tiebreaker. May have a little less consequence than 2012, but it's still roughly the same.
Well, so it was looking at like district championship rankings from last year. So this doesn't as directly impact it compared to 2012 in that your ranking score was more immediately affected, but that it's the first tiebreaker. But looking at the rankings from district champs at 2023, the second and third alliances were tied on RP. Fourth and fifth were tied on RP. Sixth and seventh were tied on RP. 8 through 11 were tied on RP. So all of those tie breaks are getting decided based off of that cooperation score.
Right, and that's a pretty typical distribution where you'll have groups of 2 and 3 in the top 10 easily.
And on top of that,
so that's where a lot of times tiebreakers don't really have an effect, but to visibly see that.
So even though it might be one or two teams, the other thing is that tiebreaker impacts you possibly for the alliance selection. Maybe you are captain versus not, but it also directly impacts how many district points you get. Mm-hmm. So those things, last year there were several teams that were just a few points away, right? And now if I'm at the top of the group of 4 or at the bottom of the group of 4, so the top group of the 4, that something like that could impact not just that competition, but
right.
worlds.
And I would like to say, sorry, David. You can go ahead.
I just have a question. Has anybody figured out how the cooperation bonus works? Is it like a 1 or a 0 in your match?
Yeah, it's a 1 or a 0.
1 or a 0.
Yeah.
And so you're averaging the 1s and 0s. Okay.
Yeah. And
okay, that's what I assume. Either have it or you don't. So it's a 1 or a 0.
I personally like and enjoy how the cooperation can impact how easy it is to get the rank point. I think that aspect that we had in 2023 was nice. However, another thing that teams don't realize is in 2023, getting the cooperation didn't necessarily have a negative impact on you, right? I just scored 3 in my middle zone. It was great. Here, that cooperation to do it, I'm sacrificing a note from my amp cycle, right? And so if I'm trying to maximize my amp output, me putting 1 into the cooperation negatively affects that. So instead of it being a thing of, both teams did something that was optimal for them, it becomes, both teams did something that wasn't necessarily optimal for their high score. So that's an interesting trade-off that teams have to look at this year where they didn't have to look at last year. And again, for it to be the first tiebreaker for ranking points, I think is a bit absurd. I'm by no means saying that, hey, if you see a team that's ranked above you, you don't want to be ranked above you. Like, I don't think that's a great idea. But for teams to have that ability is not a good thing. I just think it'll end up getting abused in some way. And my goal is by talking about it, it gets remedied. But I am very, very concerned that it is being directly involved in terms of teams ranking.
Okay.
Well, it is a fun function in match too for the cooperation, as Thomas was saying, that you're sacrificing a note from your amplifying cycling, but that it has to be done within the first 45 seconds of teleop, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct.
That it's an interesting mechanic to have something front loaded in the match, instead of back end loaded.
But
for an interesting mechanic there.
At the same time, if you get the cooperation right, the number of notes you have to score for the melody drops from 18 to 15. So really, you're sacrificing one note, but at the same time, you're making it so that you have to score 3 fewer notes in the speaker.
But that note is not sacrificed in the 18 or 15.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing a boost, which is 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're talking about, 3 to 6 points. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because a boost is only going to give, I mean, in typical situations, it's only going to give you maybe 6 points.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, you're really looking for boosting both alliances in that match's capability of getting a ranking point and improving all 6 robots in that match ranking compared to the rest of the field.
Right.
But
okay.
All right. With that said, next topic, kitbot. What do we think?
Yeah, I love it.
Love it.
Love it.
As a rookie team whose team members, we did build something for grits, but we're still very, very inexperienced and not. I love my team, but we are very rookies, or we are very new to this still.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it scores and the fact that it has instructions and code, and it's just an amazing jumping point for us to start. If we can start getting it built early, and then we can look at how to modify it from there. I love the fact that First is doing this.
I love it. And our team has grown some. We added that second high school, and now we've got bigger recruiting, so we're a bigger team with a lot more new people on it. So we confirmed today that we're going to have the new students build it. We have a kit bot sitting in a kit chassis sitting around, so they'll just build that. And heck, if it beats the one we built for Anderson, we'll take it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of teams are going with that strategy, is just to build it to get familiar with the cycling process. I think some are even building it and putting it on a swerve chassis just to get a more refined picture of what a higher capability robot's going to look like driving around the field. But yeah, I think the accessibility of playing the game, and one of the awesome parts about it is getting the students on those teams excited about their capability of playing the game. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of excitement that can be generated and has been generated purely off of getting a drivetrain to move during a match. Mm-hmm. But knowing your robot can go out there and score points and contribute to your alliance rather than I'm just going to play defense this entire match because we have a drivetrain out there. I think it's an awesome accessibility point, but an awesome way to really get that inspiration note going for the students on those teams to say, all right, we've got this really starting point, and a great starting point, but was awesome to hear Colin Foltz mention in Kickoff. He's like, we don't view this as a final finish point. We view this as a starting point. So take this thing and build on it and start iterating right away and start building on it to keep building that skill set. Mm-hmm. But it's an awesome way to get those teams rolling.
And go Brian.
So Anupam, let me double check real quick. They give you instructions, but they don't give you like a project plan, right? Just like here's how you assemble it, right?
Their build instructions, there's a video that goes step by step on how to build it. They include source code that gets it working out of the gate as well.
Mm-hmm. So the one thing I would love to see them add to the kit bot is actually a project plan.
Which basically a target schedule.
Yeah.
Yep, a target schedule. Because the thing is, there was a team that I that was signed up a couple of years ago, right? And they came to one of our meetings. They're like, they thought that if I do like a couple hours, 2 to 4 hours on a Saturday, we can do this, right? But then they see teams that have been doing this for a while and do 20, 25, 30-hour weeks, and they say, I can't do that. I'd love to see a project schedule for the kitbot that gets it done in 3 or 4 weeks, and it says I'm meeting so many hours a day that are more realistic, right? That you more sustainable, you don't burn out, and give a team and show them what you could do in a realistic thing, and don't look at teams that put in 5, 6, or 7 days a week.
Like, give them a suggested timeline of
Yep.
this is kickoff. By this day, you should be driving around. By this day, you should be building the manipulator.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
And then they learn that when they get abilities beyond that, they should have a schedule and have milestones, because too often you bite off more than you can chew, and you think you can get everything done.
And you don't know how behind you are because of the inexperience. Yep. That's a good idea.
Other than that, I love the kitbot.
Loving it.
Next note, I guess, is how useful do we view the kitbot to an alliance, either for quals matches or playoff matches?
I mean, we talked about kind of alliance makeups and the potential of a dedicated speaker bot, right? If you pair that with an amp bot, or at least a bot that can do the speaker and the amp, like, it's going to contribute points, and it can contribute amplified points if you have a robot on your alliance that can do an amp. So
I think that shooter, that kit bot is going to outscore some custom solutions. So I think if you get it put together and practice with it, it's going to outscore custom built bots that are doing the same task.
I think it easily fits on Alliance. If you look back at District Champs last year, it was so fun because you had 3 robots that were contributing offensively. And by giving this ability, you introduce that excitement earlier in the season, because you're not trying to figure out, how well do they drive, right? There's the floor has been raised to the benefit of those teams, but it also benefits the competition.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think you run it. So the kit bot, I don't believe, can score in the amp, but it's the pure cycler on the speaker, really. If I'm correct, huh? No, I'm not correcting you. I'm just
just
clarifying.
Yeah, but it also does not have a climber, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, no climber.
Right.
Okay. So just for kind of looking at what are the where it fits into an alliance, either early or later on, that if it's cycling on the speaker very efficiently, I could very easily see these robots being captains early on, just for being a pure scorer and being consistent at it. Later on, I think alliance captains are really excited about having one of these as potentially a third robot at District Champs, because if they're still pure speaker cyclers at that point, and your 1 and 2 robots are capable of feeding that amp and keeping it going, and you have a third robot that's just cycling and putting in bonus game pieces in that speaker as you're amplifying it, that's an awesome spot to be, or an awesome capability set to have as a robot for contributing to an alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the first upgrade you do on that would be climb, although you could put an amp thing on it. I figured out how to do that without too much trouble. But I think lining that thing up to be effective in the amp, you're going to be fiddling around with it. I'd rather just have you shooting and add a climber.
Yeah, I think if you focus your efforts on getting that kitbot ready, and then the rest of your efforts on getting a climber, you're in a good spot.
And I'm sure a lot of the open build teams on Chief Delphi will probably be doing some kitbot stuff, and you'll probably find some easy stuff that you can adapt.
Yeah, definitely keep your eyes open during the season and at events, because if you have that same robot already and you see another robot running around with that's a simple climber, we could add that.
Yeah, but you can add basically the climber from every bot 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
One-way pull down is all I need.
Mm-hmm. Heck, you can
because you're already off.
Keep your eyes out for those simple solutions.
There's the Andy Mark climber in a box, right? You just get 1 or 2 of those, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but again, just have it up and pull a ratchet down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go up and down. because your robot's already tall. You're not driving under the chain anyway. Your bat head, you're gonna have to back into it, with your shooter out front. So you just have to back into it. Your hooks are already up in the air. Just pull down. Don't go up and down because there's no
Yeah.
reason to. So put a ratchet on it. Make it simple. No brake needed. Just pull done.
Yeah, what gets interesting there is then trying to double climb, but just try to keep those possibilities as open as possible while you're looking at it. But yeah, again, some cool capabilities of a new resource that was introduced this season for having in the kitted parts rather than kind of the every bot or the robot in 3 days solutions that we've had in the past. So cool growth in the first environment.
Yeah.
If
you get that done early and get to a practice field, you're going to be so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, very valuable. Very valuable. Those will be scooped up.
What do we have next up on the agenda?
I think it's time to enter Thomas's donut shop.
I believe it's donut shop time.
Donut time.
We need to. Do we have a logo for that? Donut time.
We should get one.
We need to
we need
get
a
one
little
made.
theme song.
Yeah.
For those that were around last
Thomas's
season,
donut shop.
we got into a situation where we were commonly discussing, or I think it was offers offered by our one and only Thomas Priego here, suggesting that teams bring him donuts for certain activities, for either bringing him T-shirts or whatever else.
Yeah. Give me your donuts and I'll ask questions here and stuff like that.
But we're excited to announce a new segment of the show for Thomas's Donut Shop, in which we put some wagers on the table, similar to what we have in the past, but putting some donuts on the table this time.
Well, technically, we can.
Thomas, you want to lead us through the first wager on the table?
Hold on. Before we do that one, do you want to say how many times or how many teams?
What's the difference?
Oh,
it's Thomas's donut shop.
Because
it's not Brian's donut shop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brian. Yeah, Brian.
Well, so first introduce what we're
Brian's
talking
barbecue
about.
shop.
All right. The first thing is, how many times, Brian, will we see the trap get scored? Kellen, you get to go first.
Is this during the entire PCH season, or like
yes,
including district champs?
Yes.
Oof, this is a big. This is. I'm
See,
going to need to get my calculator out.
I know. That's why you say for teams, it's easier because you don't know when they're going to come online.
I think I'm going to go with. Man, this is no good. Who came up with this question?
Yeah, I'm going to need a calculator.
It's such a weird game mechanic and such an extra thing on top of all the other things you already have to do. I think there are going to be pretty few robots that can do it. I think we've been skeptical to this degree in the past and been entirely wrong. But I'm going to go with, just for the PCH district and district championship season, I'm going to go with 25. That's my
what?
And that might be high. That's
no way.
Okay. Do you think I'll let you put your number on the table, David? But you got to wait a few more turns here.
Okay.
So it's my turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Anupam's next up.
I'm gonna go with 12, and I think only one team in our district is gonna do it. And there's some crazy people down the road near North Gwinnett, somewhere.
No idea who you're talking about, but
yeah, building wood robots and putting them in bonfires.
So I'm gonna go 45.
Whoa!
And here's the thing. They have 48 matches to do it. Once they get it, they're doing it every time. So if they get it by week 3, and then they're playing 3-5, and then you get, so you got quals and everything else in playoffs. I think there's going to be a handful of teams, at least 2 to 6 that do it. And if there's somebody shows a simpler design that's easy to mount, then that number can be low. But right now, I'll say 45.
Mr. David?
150 to 200.
Well, we need a number. We're not a range. We're
Okay, all right.
What?
150.
In our
Since
district,
y'all are going down there and
150
like,
times.
yeah,
See?
You're crazy. And I might eat those words later, but I think
See?
you're crazy.
3 teams can accomplish that.
3 teams.
3
Okay.
teams. And
Hold on.
I'm here to announce on this show. I'm one of them.
Hold on. The trap.
Oh.
Oh, hold on. This is putting the note inside that vertical thing.
And the
Yeah,
trap.
trap.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am going to be one of those teams that can do that. Well, you're talking to one of the guys that's going to make one. Okay.
I know.
1771 will have one. Walton will have one. That's 3 teams. 150.
I think
But hold on. You don't play 150 matches.
Well, there's 3 teams doing it, and they have 48 matches each.
Three
you
teams
can
are-
you can
Well,
score 3
all right.
traps in a match, Brian.
So yes.
150. That's my number.
150. See, I'm looking pretty good now.
I
What? Yeah, way
At
down
least
there,
more
what?
sane if things should go off the rails. See, there's
Right?
people
That-
crazier
that's
in either
all-
direction.
That 12 and 25 thing looks like, wow, really? Right? But see, David and I are in the same boat. Once you get it, it's going to happen. There's going to be
gonna do
a
it.
handful of teams.
Oh yeah.
All right, Donut
I-
Man, prove us wrong.
I
Yeah.
think David was aggressive, but not aggressive enough.
Okay.
I think 175 is my bet, and it is for this one reason: a team can score the trap more than once,
Yes.
and teams once. I know for a fact that there are multiple teams planning on doing that. So if a team can score in the trap 3 times a match
Yep.
consistently, and that's more than one team, that's going to inflate the number a lot. On top of that, I think there's going to be a significant, or not necessarily significant, but a good portion of teams that are able just to do it once. I think that number, I think it's a hard task, yes, but it's an easily repeatable task. So once you figure it
Yeah.
out, that number is going to shoot.
You're hanging on a dangling chain, tilting
No, you're
left
not
and
either.
right.
No, you're not.
You're not.
You
Not.
have to be hanging from the chain in order to score that thing.
You
Hey, you-
can
hey, you-
touch.
Hold on. I want to listen to this because if he's got his next
David,
word,
stop talking. David,
His-
stop talking.
David's,
Never mind,
David's
never
Ryan's
mind.
taking notes
Never
over
Never
here.
mind. I've got it.
David, stop talking.
We
No, no,
got it. I know how to do it.
Okay, so we've got
We're
some
doing
secret
it.
sauce that they can't reveal.
It's not.
David, stop
think,
talking.
Just think.
Stop talking.
All right,
Stop
I will be going to bed late tonight. I'll be looking back at those rules again.
Not as
There-
hard as.
Stop
it looks.
talking.
All right. Never mind.
All right.
I'm also not convinced by it being worth it to do that 3 times in a match to go climb up, get up there, dunk it, and
That's
instead of
15 points.
I understand that, but you can
In a-
be cycling
playoff.
and amping.
In a playoff
At the
match,
same-
it might be.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it's an interesting trade-off. Curious how that works out for you, but we'll see if at least Anupam looks crazier than me if we are in fact.
I
super low.
think. Well, okay. I haven't been in David's mind and seen his interpretation of the rules.
Rules. You just put the thing.
Well,
in the
hold
slot.
on.
David, stop talking.
Okay. All right. Never mind.
I'm gonna go back and re-listen.
I'm still convinced it's not as easy as they're making it sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
With that said, we'll move on to the next question. We'll review how foolish we are
Thomas, give it to
two
us.
or 3 months from now.
All righty. How early in the season will we see an ensemble? For those who don't know what that means, because weird words are hard sometimes, that means that is the end game ranking point. To do that, you have to score 10 stage points, right? Which is hanging in the trap and parking, and have 2 robots hanging on the chain. 2 things to do it. So how early in the season will we see an ensemble?
Well, it's 10 stage points, right?
10 stage points
Yeah.
plus 2 climbing.
You have to have 2 climbs.
Yeah.
You have to have
You
2
have to have 2
climbing
climb.
and you have to have 10 points.
Yeah. So 2 climbing, and you have to have total 10 points. So if you get 2 harmony, or if you get a harmony and then 1 climb, you get it. If you get 2 to harmonize and a spotlight, you get it. I'm gonna say we see it week 3 in a qualification match at
Well,
Gwinnett.
It has to be a qualification match.
Yeah,
Right?
it's not gonna happen in playoffs until district champs.
Well, you don't get a ranking point.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
This is the
Yeah,
ranking point
yeah.
question.
The ranking point. Okay, so you will see it in week 3 at Gwinnett, and it'll happen once.
All right.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm not sure who's on the clock. Oh, I am.
you are.
Yeah.
You are Brian.
Yeah, we've got a
Up
rotating thing,
I'm
so we
looking-
don't have somebody constantly pegged at the first.
I'm looking at Carrollton's team list. I'm gonna say week 3. Sorry, week 2.
At Dalton and Anderson?
Yeah, there are some really good teams there that have the capability, and especially Walton have a field, right? They can practice all day long. So if that's on their list, they can pull it off.
All right, you got your answer, David. Go.
I'm gonna
All
go
right.
2.
Anderson week 2.
Ah.
All right,
Anderson
Thomas,
week
you
2.
got-
Gwinnett week 3.
I'm going week 2, day 1.
No way.
Even early. I was so aggressive on my early bid that I put week 1 on this one. I'm also week 2. But yeah, this is I think a no-brainer because they're out of the amount of qualification matches, somebody's bound to hit those microphones for having two climbs up. So I think we're good to see that. But next question, Thomas, what do we got?
How early in the season will we see a melody? Brian, you get to go first.
That one, seeing as it was the scoring RP in 2023 was later on, and that was shorter cycles. I'm going to say week 4.
David.
Week 3 Gwinnett.
I'm next. I think we'll see it at district champs.
Ooh.
Oh, definitely a district chance, but you don't think until then. Okay.
I think it'll be like last year where you'll see it where last year you saw it once and then it happened a lot at district champs. I think this year you'll see it at district champs.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah, I think you're going to get a couple matches that get a few game pieces away in week 2 for some good cycling alliances that hit their rhythm. But I think we're going to see some really refined robots in week 3, even though it's fairly early in the season. That I think you're going to see teams cycling enough. I don't think it's going to happen very consistently, but I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my number, but I forgot to take into account that the kitbot can do the task.
That's what I was about to bring up, and my guess is with the new kitbot, I wouldn't say week 2 because teams are still figuring out how to drive and move and getting inspected, but definitely week 3 in Gwinnett, you will see it happen.
So what are you saying about Gwinnett?
Well, it's a lot of teams' second event already.
And it's deep. It's so the qualification matchups. Well, anyway.
Yeah. Second event. There's only somebody's going 2-3.
Yeah,
No.
I'm going 2-3. I think
Otto's going 2-3.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Last one. When will the first 4 RP match take place? I'm going to go ahead and go first because I've kind of already pigeonholed myself. I'm going to say district champs.
I like to see you justify picking an earlier week, though. I want to see the gymnastics to justify that.
I am crazy, but I'm not insane, Brian.
David, are you more bold than Thomas?
No. Well, not much. Not much on this one. District champs for sure. It's either going to have to be week 3 or district champs.
Just for the strength of schedule for what you're looking at.
It's the depth of schedule to get the qualification gods to line up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so David's also district champs. That
go
puts me
district
on the hot seat. I'm gonna, just for making things interesting, I'm gonna call we're gonna go week 5. Week 5.
With one of those 20 whatever traps that happened.
Stars aligned, David.
How many stars aligned. Okay.
All right, Anupam, what do you got?
Let me see. I'm looking at I'm gonna go with week 4. I think you'll see it once in week 4, kind of like last year. My thought is that week 3, like, it's some teams' second events, but it's some teams' first events, and they're getting warmed up. The roster's supposedly deep, but in week 4, it's most teams' second event, and the Charleston event looks pretty deep, and Carrollton has some top-heavy teams, so I think you'll see it happen between those 2 events once, maybe twice.
All right, Brian, what do you got?
I'm gonna go week 4. I again think it's gonna happen once or twice. It's gonna even if anything happening before district champs, it's gonna be a once or twice thing. I'd be surprised if you get it twice, probably just once, just because of the RNG nature of the schedule. And I think at district champs, it's not gonna be prevalent like it was last year.
I will be the one to point out that, and I think we've already referenced as silly as my answer was, that our answers are entirely flipped for this answer compared to how many times we'll see the trap get scored, for how many times that'll impact getting that RP. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But yeah, curious to see how that goes. We got some donut wagers on the board. We'll see if we get some more wagers on the board throughout the season once we get some more episodes running, either later this build season or once we get our preview and review shows going during event season. But we'll see who gets on top of that donut board.
So since it's a donut shop, usually you get donuts from a donut shop. So Thomas, a dozen donuts for each of the winner from you.
I'm a master's candidate who only works weekends at the Home Depot. I don't know what money you think I have to where I can afford donuts from a donut shop.
Well, it's your donut shop. You should be making them. Right?
Yeah, you named it. You went into business. If you have a bad business plan, that's on you. You like part-time work at like Krispy
All right.
Kreme.
We've got homework. We need a logo.
Mm-hmm.
Next page bit, we need a logo.
Oh, also, I'm just going to get ahead of the 8 ball. Techno Titans, this is for you, Howard.
Shout out.
You guys are behind the 8 ball. You need to keep working harder. Keep up. Yeah, good is not good enough.
I love it. With that being said, anybody else have final thoughts on either the game or what you're looking forward to this season?
Oh! I have one more thing. We forgot. We're going to we're announcing it now. But we are doing a reveal night live stream once again this year. We are doing it. We've discussed it before. I'm not springing it on them. We are doing it. This time we're doing it a bit smarter. There should be a post in the Mentor Roundtable Slack if you're not there of how to submit and when to submit. I'm still trying to figure out the deadline for that. However, we will be open to doing last minute submissions like we did last year. So just keep that with an open mind. Yeah, that's the big thing. So just keep that in mind.
I think we'll try to get that posted in the PCH Discord as well.
Yeah.
And if you can't find anything, David is on the PCH Discord. You reach out to him; he can get you information. And if you're a mentor and are not on PCH Mentor Slack, you can do that same route to get on the PCH Mentor Slack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Other final notes or thoughts on the game and the season?
I'm looking forward to it. It's a very fun game, but I also last year with how many teams elevated their game and were doing well all season, Howard.
But not good enough, Howard. Not good enough.
I mean, Howard, technically only went to World. That's just not good enough. If you don't come away with the World Championship, you're just not trying, right?
Gotta try harder, Howard.
But anyway, I think this game with the versatility and with the kit bots, it's gonna be really fun to see the level of competition go up across the board.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a great game. It's got a lot of strategic options. It's going to evolve. My concern or not concern or fear is how far out can you practically shoot? And is that the only the top 10 robots that can shoot from the back line? Hopefully it's not that hard, but we'll see.
Shout out to all the rookie teams out there and the creative team names. 2 in particular.
One,
G28 Robotics. I don't know if that's a reference to a penalty or a game rule, but I'm going to assume it is. And then my friend Dusty Scorch started a new team up in Dawsonville, the Dawson Dino Nuggets. I love that team name so much.
They aren't in Georgia, but I'm a big fan of Rat Fight. Out of Kentucky.
Rat Fight.
9152 Rat Fight.
All right. I guess any of my final thoughts are that I think this is going to be an awesome game. It really is going to evolve a lot during the season with that, how the amplifier works and its continued growth of use, as well as looking forward to being proven wrong on the trap, but curious to see how that plays out. For all those different niche elements of this game, I think we're going to see a lot of teams excel by being the master of the one or two things they do. But curious to see if there are any crazy teams that really pull off being able to do everything. But it's a dangerous game to play. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Build robust bumpers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The most important part of your robot.
But I think we got everybody's last notes there. But with that said, I think we'll go ahead and end the show, and we'll look forward to seeing you out there, PCH.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.